Welcome to the recap of Transformers Generation 1 from 1984 to 1987. We got 4 seasons to cover, and as always, there are spoilers. And so, without further ado, let's begin. So, in episode 1 is part 1 of a 3-part story. So, the story begins in outer space. And then we go to a planet called Cybertron. That's where the Transformers come from. We have the good guys, the Autobots, and then we have the bad guys, the Decepticons. Yes, Cybertron is a peaceful place for the Transformers to live. Or so that was the case, that was until the war exploded between the bad guys, the Decepticons, and the good guys, the Autobots. Now you're probably wondering, what was the reason for this battle? It's because for the Decepticons there are 2 reasons for it. One for total domination, and the other for power control. As a matter of fact, the battle has gotten so bad that the power on Cybertron is going completely dry. And what makes it even more worse is that many few of the Autobots have struggled to survive. So anyway, we're about to meet 2 of the Autobots, which are Wheeljack and Bumblebee. And there they are now collecting energy rods for their home. Now, according to Wheeljack, he tells Bumblebee that there's a problem because he's not so sure how much longer those reactors can last since the war has gotten so bad. So Bumblebee tries to cheer up Wheeljack by saying, at least we found those rods. However, according to Wheeljack, even though he agrees with Bumblebee, said that once these rods run out, that there's no time to worry about it. So once Bumblebee and Wheeljack got all the energy rods they need, it's time for them to head back to their home. But unfortunately, on the way there, we have a couple of Decepticons, which are Starscream and Thundercracker, ready to attack Wheeljack and Bumblebee. Also with Thundercracker and Starscream is Skywarp. So, Thundercracker and Skywarp had a plan to keep the Autobots from getting to their home base, which is in Iacon, by creating a ring of fire with their fire throwers. But luckily for Wheeljack and Bumblebee, they managed to make it through okay. So, even though Bumblebee was injured during the attack but not seriously hurt, but the good guys finally made it to Iacon. So, meanwhile, there, what they didn't know is that someone or something had just passed them by. That's Soundwave of the Decepticons. So what Soundwave did is to send his right-hand spy Laserbeak to find out what the Autobots are up to. Well, before Laserbeak can do his recording, what Soundwave did is that when he saw Wheeljack passing him by, he does what he knows best, camouflage himself. So inside Iacon, that's Jazz. He's the second smallest of the Autobots, and he just met up with his leader, Optimus Prime. And next to him were Prowl and Jailbreaker. So Optimus Prime was asking Jazz, does he have any luck finding any power source at all? But Jazz just told his leader the bad news, that Cybertron's going dark and the power has run out. So Optimus Prime, after he heard the bad news, he said unless there's a new power source that needs to be found, nobody's going to win this war, especially with Cybertron's powers running out. But either way, according to Optimus Prime, he just got some good news from Prowl, that their spaceship is ready to go. So you know what this means? Optimus Prime and his group of Autobots are heading to Earth, but they're not the only ones. And that's because, for one thing, the Decepticons had overheard a conversation from the Autobots thanks to Soundwave and Laserbeak. So, at the Decepticon base, that's Megatron. He's the leader of the bad guys, the Decepticons. And he just told his group that if there's news source to be found, then they should find it. Then, when Soundwave came back, he told his leader Megatron the good news. He said the Autobots are heading for Earth. Well, that's a splendid idea, Megatron said, because he's impressed with the good news from Soundwave. So, you know what this means? The Decepticons are going to Earth as well. But he needed someone or something to stay behind, and that would be Shockwave of the Decepticons. Shockwave not only agrees to stay behind, but he told Megatron that he'll make sure that the energy source progress will go along the way as planned. But Shockwave also agrees that Cybertron will be exactly the same that Megatron left it when he came back. So Starscream made his case with Megatron that if he, Starscream, had been the leader, the Autobots would have been defeated by now. That's true, Megatron said, but only the selected few of the Decepticons will be able to lead. But however, even though Starscream agrees, he said that someday he will lead the Decepticons, but Megatron refused. Back with the Autobots in Icon, the Autobots are doing all the systems procedures. So Jazz of the Autobots told Optimus Prime the good news that the ship is all set and ready to go. So the Autobot ship left first, and of course the Decepticons are doing the same thing with their ship. So their ship was ready to go as well. So the Decepticon ship left as well to follow the Autobot ship. Well, meanwhile the good news is that the Autobot ship had managed to avoid the asteroid's collision. Luckily for Ironhide of the Autobots, he'll be fine. So the Autobot ship managed to continue on the way as planned, and so did the Decepticon ship that was behind them. But still, the Autobots were not aware that the Decepticons are following them yet. That was until, thanks to Prowl, now here comes the bad news. The Decepticons ship are following the Autobot ship the same way as they did. So anyway, long story short, the Decepticon ship had finally went up next to the Autobot ship, and the Decepticons climbed aboard. So once the Decepticons are aboard the Autobot ship, the Autobots went ahead and attacked them. But now here comes the bad news. The Autobot ship is out of control because of that attack. Well, Optimus Prime had managed to regain control of the ship, but now here comes a bigger problem. It's colliding headfirst into the volcano. And at finally long last, it did. The Autobot ship crashed. So flash forward 4 million years later. The year is now 1984, and back at the Autobots headquarters, the Autobots computer had launched a satellite to revive all the Decepticons and, of course, the Autobots. So that's what it did. So the Decepticons were first to be revived. So after that, the Decepticons left the Autobots HQ. But before Megatron and his Decepticons can get on their mission, the first thing they did was take a look at the view of the Earth. As much as Megatron likes to admit it, he said that even though that they had been on Earth for 4 million years, it doesn't mean that their mission had changed. Thundercracker of the Decepticons is getting worried because he told the leader by asking this question: what if Cybertron isn't there anymore? Don't worry, Megatron said. It will. So Megatron says that all they need are the energy resources that are right here on Earth. So the Decepticons are now on their way. But just to make sure that the Autobots don't get in the way, Starscream knows what to do. But unfortunately, inside the Autobots' headquarters, Optimus Prime was the first to be revived inside because of Starscream's shooting. So the Autobot ship's computer did what it always did. It revived Optimus Prime, the leader of the Autobots, just like what it did with the Decepticons. So after Optimus Prime has been revived, the rest of the Autobots are revived as well. Back with the Decepticons, Megatron, the leader of the Decepticons, said that he spotted some rocks up ahead. He said it'd be a best location for their base. However, Megatron told Soundwave that the first thing they need is some blueprints for the space cruiser. Starscream, on the other hand, his job was to gather all the parts for all the construction plans. However, Starscream asked the question, what about the materials? Well, use your imagination, Megatron said. So Starscream looked at Soundwave and asked if he had any suggestions. What about that power plant over there? Soundwave suggested. Then Soundwave said that he's going to need some backup just in case. So Soundwave agrees. So he sends out Rumble to do the job. So we know this means the three of the Decepticons are on their way to the power generator. Back with the Autobots. Now that the good guys have been revived just as the bad guys did, Optimus Prime, the Autobots leader, told the Autobots that now we have a bigger problem because somehow, for some unknown reason, the Decepticons had knew about the energy resources just before they did. So now it's up to the Autobots to stop the Decepticons from draining the resources of Earth dry. So what he did is that he sends out Hound of the Autobots, who is now a Jeep, to go on a search mission, while Cliffjumper, who's the second smallest of the group, agrees to go with him. So even though Optimus Prime agrees with Cliffjumper's case when he said he couldn't wait to boot some Decepticons, but Optimus Prime said, "Whoa, let's not jump the gun yet. Just find them first," Optimus Prime suggested. So Hound and Cliffjumper were sent on their way. So back with the Decepticons, Rumble, Soundwave, and Starscream went to the power generator. Once they've arrived, Starscream made a case with Rumble to say that someday he'll be the leader. "That's true," Rumble said, "but the only leader that's in charge around here is Megatron, and there's nobody else but that." "That's true," Starscream said, "but someday I'll be the leader. You'll see. Everyone has a weakness." "That's true," Rumble said, "but not Megatron." "Well, we'll just see about that," Starscream said. So Rumble did what he knows best, use some pile drivers to shake up the earth. So back with Cliffjumper and Hound, they're still on their search to find the Decepticons. So Cliffjumper told Hound to never fall in love with Earth because they're not going to be staying for very long. Well, long story short, thanks to Hound and Cliffjumper, they not only found the Decepticons, but the base that was under construction at the moment. So Cliffjumper says, "I just can't wait to get my hands on the Decepticons." "Now just a minute there," Hound said. "Now just remember, Optimus Prime, our leader, said to just find them first. So that's what we did." Being curious, Cliffjumper wants to know from Hound what are they up to, although Hound said that he isn't sure yet. So he and Cliffjumper decide to listen in. The first thing that Hound did was the voice of Megatron, the leader of the Decepticons, saying, "We must get the energy sources from this Earth." "Well, here's what we'll do," Soundwave said. "We'll make the sources and turn them into energon cubes and put them in the space shuttle." "How delightful," Megatron said when he heard the good news from Soundwave. "And just think, the Autobots are sealing their own fate." But what they didn't know, the Decepticons, that is, that they had been overheard by Hound and Cliffjumper of the Autobots, but they weren't aware of it. Cliffjumper took out the biggest gun there is. So what did Cliffjumper do? He decided to fire at Megatron, the leader of the Decepticons, but instead he missed. So when the Decepticons saw what had happened, Megatron sent the Decepticons after Cliffjumper and Hound. So Hound told Cliffjumper, "Oh boy, look what you did!" And so they were being pursued by the Decepticons, both Hound and Cliffjumper. Soundwave, before the pursuit can happen, sends his right-hand spy Laserbeak to do the job. So that's what he did. So, back with Hound and Cliffjumper, they were being pursued by Laserbeak of the Decepticons, but no matter how many times they avoided pursuit, they just couldn't shake Laserbeak. Unfortunately for Hound, he wasn't so lucky when he was finally attacked by Laserbeak of the Decepticons, which led a result of Hound being fallen off the cliff. But he'll be alright. But luckily for Ratchet of the Autobots, he showed up when he did. On the way down with Ratchet, Cliffjumper apologized to Hound for jumping the gun, and that he should know better. However, Hound forgives Cliffjumper. Back with the Decepticons, Thundercrackers with Reflector, and they just spotted something nearby. So, to investigate, Reflector transformed into a camera so that Thundercracker can take a picture. So that's what he did. Meanwhile, Thundercracker just made a report to Soundwave of the Decepticons to tell him the good news. So what Soundwave did is that he sends out Ravage out on this mission. So that's exactly what Soundwave did. And of course, as for Thundercracker, he's still watching a truck. So back with the truck, now that one of the workers, Joe, he was the first to get out of the truck, and he and his partner just saw that the power generator had been left in ruins, and that's when they were being attacked by Ravage of the Decepticons. So good news for Joe and his partner, they made it inside of the truck and then made their escape away from Ravage of the Decepticons. Back at the Autobots HQ, so while Hound was being fixed up by Ratchet, Cliffjumper just told Optimus Prime, the leader of the Autobots, what had happened, that the Decepticons have a plan to make Energon cubes to take back to Cybertron. So Jazz of the Autobots was told by Optimus Prime to line up the rest of the Autobots outside. So Jazz agrees and he heads off. So later outside, that's exactly what Jazz did. He and his leader Optimus Prime lined up the rest of the Autobots: Wheeljack, Ironhide, Mirage, Jailbreaker, Prowl, who's a police car, Cliffjumper, Bumblebee, and let's not forget Sunstreaker, he's there too. And of course, also there is Ratchet. He's an ambulance. Sideswipe, who's the red car, transformed as well, according to Jazz. The last two to transform were Optimus Prime, the leader, and Jazz. So now that all the Autobots transformed, they're now on their way. Later at the Decepticon base, Laserbeak just finished doing some surveillance routes just like any spy would. When Soundwave came back with Laserbeak, he told Megatron, the leader of the Decepticons, the good news. Then Soundwave said that even better, thanks to Laserbeak, he found the source of energy nearby. Megatron was pleased to hear the good news. So we know what this means. It's time for the Decepticons to leave. So, meanwhile, at the oil rig in the middle of the ocean, we're about to meet the two of the workers that work there, Sparkplug and his son Spike, and the rest of the oil workers that work there. So, there's Sparkplug and Spike now, but what they didn't know is that they were about to be attacked, along with the rest of the oil workers, that is, and that's when the Decepticons show up: Starscream, Megatron, the leader, and of course, Soundwave, he's also there, Thundercracker, Skywarp, Reflector, Laserbeak, the right-hand spy, and when the oil workers saw what had happened, they couldn't believe it. Anyway, the workers tried to take matters in their own hands, but they failed miserably. In the meantime, Rumble, the second smallest of the Decepticons, starts attacking the workers. Spike, who's Sparkplug's son, tries to take matters in his own hands by getting Rumble off of him, but he failed and got shoved into the water instead. So Sparkplug tried to save his own son when he too dove into the water. Megatron, the leader of the Decepticons, just told Starscream to activate the Norray. I don't know what it means. So after Starscream did that, Megatron just told Soundwave to do what he knows best, create Energon cubes, and so that's what Soundwave did. So while the Decepticons are busy collecting Energon cubes, Starscream seems pleased. He told his leader Megatron, "We did it! It worked!" Then Starscream told Megatron, the leader of the Decepticons, that even better, we can go back to Cybertron. So even though Megatron agrees with it, but then dismisses Starscream's suggestion. Then said, "You're such a fool, you know that? There's only a small fraction of the Energon cubes themselves." But then Starscream saw the Autobots flying by and told his leader Megatron the bad news. "It's the Autobots! They're here!" So Megatron, the leader of the Decepticons, know what to do. He does what he knows best. He transformed himself into a gun for Starscream so he can attack the Autobots that are flying nearby. So, after the brief attack, long story short, Ironhide goes one-on-one with Starscream. So while the battle's going on between the Autobots and Decepticons, and then long story short, Skywarp and Reflector are busy collecting Energon cubes that they just got. Anyway, Laserbeak tries to have a battle with Optimus Prime after Megatron has a battle with him, and then long story short, that's when the Decepticons flew up in the air, and then Megatron starts to open fire on him to say, "Have a nice swim." Well, Megatron not only shoots at the Autobots, but the oil refinery as well, and then long story short, all the Autobots, including Sparkplug and Spike and all the oil workers, are in the water. Well, bad news, the Decepticons got away. Well, for now anyway. Then, long story short, it's now up to the Autobots who are now in the water to rescue the humans, including Spike and his father, Sparkplug. So, Sparkplug and Spike, who are now in serious trouble, wanted Optimus Prime to help them. That's when here comes a bigger problem. When, long story short, the refinery that the Decepticons had destroyed earlier is on fire. Things are looking bad for the Autobots and the humans. The question is, while the fire continues to spread throughout the refinery that's sinking into the ocean thanks to the Decepticons, will everyone make it out on time? Well, we're about to find out. But right now, that's the end of part one of a three-part story in episode one.